About a month ago, I traded in my 2018 Toyota 4Runner SR5 model and bought me a new 2022 Ford Bronco Sport Big Bend Edition. Now, I wanted to get the Badlands version, but there were none available that I could find. And since my local dealer had this Big Bend version, I decided that I would get it instead. Now, in the process of deciding which version I wanted, I was on YouTube looking for footage of what the Big Bend version could do off-road, and I couldn't find any videos that demonstrated what the Big Bend version could do off-road. They were all about the Badlands version. So I decided that if I were to buy the Big Bend version, that I would do some off-road videos and basically show people what the Big Bend version can and cannot do off-road. So with that in mind, here we go. This is my Ford Bronco Sport 2022 Big Bend Edition. As you can see, it's fully stock. There's no oversized tires, no lift kit. There's the Big Bend badge. So this is our first obstacle here ahead of us. It's this hill. It is a four-wheel drive hill. My Toyota 4Runner, I tried to get up it in two-wheel drive and it wouldn't do it. Now the Toyota 4Runner that I had, being the SR5 model, only had A-track, but it did have oversized BF Goodrich KO2 all-terrains on it. In four-wheel drive, it could take this hill pretty easily. And in two-wheel drive, like I said, it couldn't do it. Now, really quick, just as I'm approaching this hill, I got the Sport just because I needed to save some money on gasoline. I drive about 2.5 hours one way from my home in eastern Arizona to Phoenix about twice a week, and since gas prices were going up, I deemed it wise to make a change. So the approach to this four-wheel drive hill, you go through a couple little ruts. There's some big rocks that we'll have to dodge. Obviously, the Bronco Sport doesn't have a lot of ground clearance, with 7.5 inches roughly of ground clearance, but I want to show what it can do when you take on a steep, loose rock type four-wheel drive hill. Now I just have it in normal mode. I don't have on any of the other modes, and we're cruising up it. It's got a little bit of wheel slippage right there. Now we're hitting the steepest part. A little more wheel slip, and we are at the top. So it really took that hill quite well. I'm actually really impressed with its ability to engage its all-wheel drive / four-wheel drive system. You know, once again, I didn't have to turn any dials or do anything like that. I just drove up the hill. Here's the look from on top, getting ready to go off. What you're seeing is that I can't see the foot of the hill where you start off at. So it is a pretty steep hill as we go down it now. As I'm going down here, there is a little slippage, and the brakes are engaging and disengaging. There you have it. First obstacle conquered. We'll go off to the second one now. Okay, we're approaching our second little obstacle down this dirt road here. The dirt road isn't really a four-wheel drive road required. It's just, you just need good ground clearance. This little obstacle that's ahead of us, we're going to go through a couple little ruts or washes. The 4Runner could do it easily in two-wheel drive, and off to the right here there's a 9 to 12 inch incline that I'm going to be going up. getting the vehicle off camber a little bit, twisting up the suspension right there. Little wheel spin, twists up fine. Now as we go into this next rut, the Bronco will float a front tire and a rear tire. So right about there, see if I can get this to do this real slow. It's engaging its all-wheel drive system, and I'm kind of teetering between two tires. The left front and right rear are both on the ground, but the right front and left rear are floating off the ground. But it engages, drops, and moves forward. Just ahead of us is going to be the third obstacle. What I've noticed with the Bronco Sport is that it obviously does not have the articulation that my 4Runner had. And if you're wanting to go four-wheeling in it, you have to remember, A, it doesn't have the ground clearance, B, it just doesn't have the articulation, and so you have to be comfortable with floating tires. Now, this is not an incredibly steep hill, however, it is quite rutted up. We're going to go down it just to get a perspective of the downhill run, and then come back up it in a minute. So dropping down into that first big rut, pulls through it all right. You know, to go down just would require a little bit of ground clearance. But to go up it is a little different. We're gonna come to this next rut. This is where the Bronco's approach really helps. You know, we get down into this rut and no scrubbing, no bumping. Just a little bit of flexing into some of these ruts is all that's happening. Now, most of these trails are really not driven by vehicles. They're a lot more used by four-wheelers and side-by-sides. So one of the other little benefits of the Bronco Sport is it's very small, and so it can take on some of these little roads that are narrow. But like I said, I've gone down this in my 4Runner in the past. Right, so we're gonna get to the bottom here and turn around quickly and go back up it. Like I said earlier, my 4Runner didn't really require four-wheel drive to get up this hill, except for when a tire fell into a rut, and then I had to engage four-wheel drive. So far, the Bronco Sport's, pulling through it all. No tire slippage on those really cruddy stock tires, really intended for road. And we're going to come to the first good sizable rut. This is where the 4Runner needed the four-wheel drive because the tires fall into these ruts. And floating a couple tires, a little wheel slippage, but it engaged. Next rut drops off to the front tire on the left. Little spin, engaged, pulled through. Now we're gonna drop into the next rut right about now. Just taking our time peacefully through that. No problem there, no wheel spin. Up the steepest part of the incline, which, like I said, that, the 4Runner didn't need four-wheel drive at this point. Was able to do it. Little tire spin there from the Bronco. And one last drop right there. Throwing the suspension off. Little wheel spin, grabs, and pulls. So overall, cruised up pretty simply with no drama. All right, we're back at the very first rut that I was at to approach that long hill. And we're gonna drop this left front tire down into it. Right front now is hovering, back is hovering, all-wheel drive engaged and pulled through. And then we're gonna attack this on the left and really get this Bronco really twisted up. And wow, that was about a foot off the ground on the back tire. But pulls right through without any dramas. Not too bad. Now, as we get ready to approach our next obstacle, I'll give you a little rundown of what I've noticed with the Bronco Sport. Articulation isn't incredible, but the all-wheel drive system seems to engage well enough to pull you out of things when you're floating tires. So far, everything I've done has been in normal mode. The next obstacle that I'm coming up, this big hill climb, I am gonna put it into sand mode. It seems to be the mode that you want for more aggressive terrain. On road, back and forth from Phoenix to where I live, I've pretty much averaged anywhere from 27 miles per gallon up to 32, which is in some cases double of what I was getting in the 4Runner. And the biggest thing I've noticed is that the Bronco Sport lacks in some ground clearance. So you have to kind of be careful as you're doing off-road travel to make sure that you're not going to grind the underneath, because this particular version has no skid plates and no underbody protection. So this hill that we're coming to now, it is a 25-degree incline. You're not going to ever get up it in anything without four-wheel drive. As a matter of fact, in my 4Runner, I actually put it in low and engaged the A-track, because as I was going up it in four-wheel high, its traction control system wasn't engaging and allowing me to get up it. So this hill was only possible to conquer in my 4Runner in four-wheel low with A-track engaged. So we're going to put this into sand mode, and there's a big rut that runs through it, and like I said, it's a 25-degree incline, which is pretty steep. We're going to try and straddle the rut down the middle. Got some wheel spin, some more wheel spin. We're still moving forward though, getting ready to top off, more wheel spin, and we've topped off. Now I'm going to turn around and give a view from the other direction. All right, so this is the view coming from the other direction going down the hill. Now I have to apologize right here that I don't have any outside video. Reason for that is that I have a broken ankle, and so to get out and climb up these hills and set things up, it's just not going to happen. And my wife, who would normally help me, is busy. So here we go, looking over the edge, and absolutely I can't even see the bottom of the hill off the front of my Bronco here, but we're going to just kind of slowly start coming over the edge, looking down at the foot of the hill, and give you a little rundown. Now the little tire slippage, but the ABS is engaging to kind of help slow that descent, and we're down. And with that hill conquered, I'm going to say that the Bronco Sport hill climbing, it can perform. I'm really impressed, especially with it without having to stop and turn it into four-wheel low or engage A-track. Just the turn of a dial, and literally a turn of the dial on the fly, to go from normal mode over to sand mode. You know, kind of a no-brainer four-wheel drive vehicle. While we approach the last obstacle that I want to show you, I want to talk a little bit about the Bronco Sport's on-road performance as it compares to my 4Runner. In some ways, I enjoy driving my Bronco Sport on road a little more than my former 4Runner. The Bronco Sport runs in some ways smoother and in other ways not as smooth on road as my 4Runner did. What I mean by that is that being a unibody, you get a little more road vibration. However, I noticed with my 4Runner that with the little oversized KO2s that I had on it, it had a tendency to want to rut track. So the difference between the two is one would rut track and the other one has more road vibration. But yet at the same time, the Bronco Sport feels a little more smooth on paved roads. Off-road, in my estimation, as the Bronco Sport as it stands, I've been able to take on about 60% of the obstacles or the roads or trails that I've traveled in my 4Runner. Now, I do have a 1.5-inch rough country lift kit that is going to be installed on this in the next couple days, and I'm thinking that once that's installed and once I'm able to put on a little larger tire and an all-terrain tire, preferably I think I'll probably go again with some BF Goodrich KO2s. They'll be 29.5 inch. I think at that point, once those two things are done, I should be able to take on about 80% of what my 4Runner was able to do. Now, how does that compare to a 4Runner with a lift kit and 33s? Well, I think that if you were to compare it that way, I think you drop back down to about 50% or maybe 60% of the obstacles. So the Bronco Sport, yeah, it's a worthy off-road vehicle. You know, as I'm going through these big ruts and washes, but it'll never be what a Jeep or a 4Runner is, just because the ability to lift it and put larger tires on it, it's just not there. Now, this last obstacle, as we're looking at it, it's just a short little incline that has some really big ruts in it. Now, with this particular obstacle, my 4Runner, I first tried it in 2-wheel drive, it just spun out. I tried it in 4-wheel drive high, and once the tires fell into the ruts, it fought for traction and couldn't get traction and pull through. So I had to stop, put it in neutral, put it in 4-wheel low, and engage the A-track system. And then obviously that activates all of its traction control, and it just cruised right through it without any issues. So that 4-wheel drive low was only required to engage A-track, not because I needed the low gear ratio or anything like that. So with the Bronco Sport, we're going to put it in sand mode and attack it in just the same way that I did with my 4Runner. A little bit of tire slippage there, getting into the ruts, some more tire spin, going in more, sliding a little bit, and we pulled through it though. So we were able to accomplish get through the obstacle, but it did, it did require pretty much everything that I think that this Bronco Sport has to do it. Got floating tires, wheel spin, and it engaged its traction control system, I guess. Although when you turn on the sand mode, it seems to turn off some traction control systems. I don't really fully understand that. Last little bit here, and kind of drive through this other additional little rut that's in front of us. Floating back tires. And finally coming around to this steep little breakover here. 4Runner never ground on, didn't touch the ground at all on this breakover. And the Bronco Sport didn't touch the ground either. So decent breakover for that. So here's my summary. Like I said earlier, the Bronco Sport in its stock condition, I think it can do about 60% of the trails that my 4Runner was able to take on. I believe that once I get the lift kit on it and get a more aggressive all-terrain tire on it and a little larger all-terrain tire on it, I can nudge that number up from 60% to about 80%. The Bronco Sport obviously suffers because it doesn't have four-wheel drive low, so taking on steep rock crawling situations where you just really need that low lug, I think you're gonna find some issues with it. The only dilemma is that you can't continue to give more and more lifts to it. I think 1.5 inches is about all that you can do at this point in time. But I truly believe that one of the first upgrades that you should do if you're going to buy a Bronco Sport is to put 1.5 inch lift on it, just to get that undercarriage up higher. I've kind of bumped the underneath a couple times, not done any damage, but I've just enough to make you crawl underneath and look and see. If you're a person that's wanting to do some real serious four-wheeling, I'd go get a 4Runner or a Jeep. But if you're wanting to be able to tackle on pretty much any dirt road and be able to take on some obstacles where a two-wheel drive vehicle won't be able to get in and out of, and where all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive is required, whether it's muddy, slippery, sandy, rutted up to a certain degree, I think the Bronco Sport can perform really well and take care of most of your needs. So really, in closing, I'm very impressed with what the Bronco Sport can do in its Big Bend version. It's actually done better than what I thought it would do, and I'm really curious to see what it can do yet more with a lift on it and some aggressive off-road or all-terrain tires. So I don't know, I'll give it a thumbs up. I'm impressed.